Hello from Coleman & Company. It's Stephanie here, and I want to show you how we can do tiny fonts. I mean micro fonts. We're talking really tiny. I'm going to show you what I was able to cut before I made micro font adjustments, what exactly those adjustments are on our Graphtec cutter so you can make these adjustments yourself, and then the things that you're going to have to kind of play with because every thickness of vinyl is just a little bit different. That means if you're doing an opaque blue and then change it to silver, you might need to make a micro adjustment. But for micro fonts, this is normal. So I'm going to show you what you can do before, then what I could do with some adjustments, and then once we found the sweet spot, exactly how small you can get with the Graphtec. Follow along. All right, let's jump right into the micro font. So this font, which I've already pre-cut for us, is kind of from the standard settings within the Graphtec. Now, the settings that we set up, of course, are the ones we use during our cut and press no stress series. If you got the Graphtec cutter from us, chances are you know these details. If not, the settings that we use can be found on our ColDesi Coleman YouTube, but essentially these are already 1/4 of an inch. Actually, I have a handy dandy bright ruler to prove it to you. All right, so here is the inch, right? There's our inch. I'm gonna put this letter P for pro tip right at the edge of that inch. You can see, boom, right there. Sorry, there. Right there, just a little bit above 1/4 of an inch, because that line right there at the top is now 1/2 an inch, so here's 1/4. Let me do another letter. I'm gonna do this G or S. See that? Go to the very bottom. Boom, just above. You can see that it's just above that 1/4 of an inch mark. Just above. So this font is already pretty small. All right, now here I'm going to compare what we could cut with the settings, usually, and then what I was able to achieve with micro fonts. Regular, micro fonts. Let me show you how. Here on the Graphtec CE6000 Plus cutter, right now I have it set under the opaque vinyl settings, okay? This is the standard settings for your standard cuts of opaque vinyl, okay? Now, if you haven't set up your conditions, you certainly want to set up one that's separate for opaque high detail. And what you do is we're going to go ahead and press this condition test button on the right hand side. That's where I can go ahead and select which one I have preordained. Right now I'm opaque. I'm going to go ahead and change that. I'll press 1 and then press the down arrow to find the one I want selected. Opaque high detail. Perfect. I'll hit enter and it's selected. Let's take a closer look. First thing is that we've got 3 pages of settings to look at. Not all of them will be changed, but let's jump right in. The tool is going to be, this tool is your 45-degree blade. That is what came with your cutter. So if you need a replacement, just order one. I certainly encourage you to replace it and keep it perfectly sharp for a precision cut, but that's what you want. The speed, 15 centimeters per second. So that's nice and slow so that I can cut it out to the detail I want without flying over and making a mistake. And then force, I actually have set to 21. Now that is among the lowest. Let me show you. I'm press 4 here for force and it'll show you all the conditions and all the forces that are set to them. The 5th condition is my opaque high detail, and that's set to 21, which as you can see compared to the opaque, regular and opaque, it's just a little bit faster, but as long as you're right there in that range, it'll make sure it's good. Okay, we want to make sure that it is not too firm where it's going to bend it while it's trying to do these tiny cuts, but we want to make sure it glides over. You can either back out or you can hit enter to set or 4 to cancel. So I'm going to go ahead and hit 4 to cancel because I don't want to make the change. And then next page we've got distance adjust, initial down force, and blade adjust. None of those need changing. Then we have acceleration. This is how quickly it'll get to full speed. We have the tangential mode. Let me show you that. Now the tangential mode, you've got 1 for 1, you've got 2 for 2, and you've got 3 for off. 1 is an overcut on every corner. 2 is an overcut at the beginning and end. I want 2. So I'm going to go ahead and press 2 or hit enter set or cancel back out, but that's what I want is 2. And then last but not least, we've got the overcut. Let me show you that. I have the start overcut and the end overcut at 0.004 of an inch. That's tiny. That's exactly what we need to make sure it is perfectly precise. Now, since we have all of the settings already pre-set up for you, including how we're going to do that little cut, how important that is, we're going to jump right into getting this started. I'll get us back to the home page. This is our little test cuts, which will make sure that it's cutting perfectly for the test cuts. And let's see, let's begin. Okay, now after we have done all of our settings, I changed the camera so you can watch as it cuts. The one additional note I'd like to make is when you're talking about your lettering, make sure that you're using a font that will work well. Typically, I try to go for something that's not too complicated because essentially your blade is tiny, but so is the lettering. Now, also, when we're looking at the blade, make sure that you do several test cuts. The opaque vinyl is shallow enough that I can literally rub my finger across the blade and not feel really anything across my finger. I feel a little bit of pressure that something's touching my finger, but not enough to obviously break skin. I also recommend that you do your test cut, and I'm going to actually do a test cut real quick before I begin cutting, just because it is a great habit to get into. Literally, and I'll move the camera over for you. Here you go. Literally, I'm going to hit condition test, which is this one right here. It's going to ask me 1 or the 3 cut. I'm just going to do the 1 cut. And then say when I'm ready, position, and hit enter. So here, it cut out your little triangle, which I know it's hard to see, but I'll show you. Right here. Okay, there's a square and a triangle, and here's the triangle from the middle. So I see that it's doing exactly what I expect it to. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, bring that back to start position. I'll go ahead and tell it that I'm done by pressing menu, and then note that this head is probably going to move a little bit. I'm going to move it over, and let's go ahead and begin with the cutting. So let me reset the lever here. When you first put it through, it'll give you options, whether it's the roll front edge, current position sheet. Because we are working with a roll, I'm going to go ahead and say roll, and I want it to get to the front edge. So it's going to do its little reading. It's getting some measurements. Keep in mind, it does not know that I did a sample cut right there. So it's going to read it without knowing. And then I'm going to go ahead and move this on over. And I'm going to move this up a little. And then hit origin. This is now the new start point. Let's send this to the cutter. Move the camera over so you can watch it cut. There we go. All right. Let's begin. And I'm simply sending this to the cutter. Okay, so we've cut out, here is one strip of the micro font that I just finished cutting out on camera for you with all of our settings. Now, before we jump into weeding this, I want to actually show you something kind of interesting that I learned. Now, this is obviously much larger font, but it's not that much larger. This is less than ½ an inch. Actually, you might even see a picture right now on your screen that shows you how I've measured these up, that they are less than ½ an inch and are considered small letters for vinyl. However, this is micro. This is tiny. So what we're going to do is I want to talk to you real quick about what I learned during this test that helped me tweak and find good solutions in this product, okay? So First, quick thing about fonts. These two on the inside are called sans serif fonts. If you don't know what sans serif is, serif is, see these little tags that are hanging off the top of the T or on the sides of the I or on the top of the H or on the end of the S? All of those are called serifs. There's also some here on the E, H's, I, T's, all of that down here. But there aren't any on these two internal fonts. These again are called sans serif fonts. The ones with serifs got caught more often. And here's really what happens. Let's say you're trying to cut a square like this, okay? Here's your square. Whoop, there's your square. You're trying to cut it, but if you didn't do the offset 0.004 cut, this is what that cut looks like, is it just goes just a little bit past at the beginning and end, but look at how tiny, 0.004 of an inch, okay? What happens if you didn't do that is that when you get really tiny, do you see how this area right here is still connected? And that means when you weed this whole area back here, it will grab this area inside, which is not what you wanted to do, because the tag is still holding on to it. It's like an incomplete square. So to prevent that from happening, that's why you want to use that offset feature, because things like serif fonts will definitely have a lot more opportunities for tags. However, when I combine sans serifs and tiny font with all of our adjustments, cutting them was actually a breeze. So let's go ahead and weed this out and have a look. One quick tip. If you're going to weed out small lettering, take out any insides. So any E, A, G's, B's, anything that has an internal area that needs to be cut out, like here on the E, there's the internal part, there's a D, in the A, in the P, all of those letters need to have those part removed. You don't have to, but let's say you were taking out the O in shampoo and you didn't remove this. Once the outside's been removed and you're now trying to remove the inner part, there's nothing to support the vinyl on the outside of where your letter is supposed to be placed. So if you do this before you begin, there's a less chance of you accidentally shifting your lettering, especially when it's this small. So that's what I'm going to start with. Let's begin. Oh, and don't forget to use your sharper tip, because one will be a little duller than the other, and you definitely need precision with this. Oh, another tip, I'm just full of them today, is use your tiny little, the tiny point on this weeding pick, and when you find one, like here's an O, I know you can't see it because it's kind of far away, but when you get to the O, kind of put it in the middle and then move your pick in a little circle or a little up and a little down, just enough to loosen it, and then you can remove it without having to actually pick it. You're just kind of releasing it. So here's an A, same thing, I'm gonna do a little tug down, a little tug up, so that anything that was cut, and there you go. And I'm just gonna repeat this throughout the document. Okay, and now since that's done, let's go ahead and grab a corner. Oh, don't forget, always a good idea. See all these little pieces? Use an extra piece of transfer tape and pick up any extras, okay? That way you don't have all of these little tiny pieces that can accidentally get stuck to your final transfer and then stuck on your garment, that is a nightmare. So get those off and move them away. And then go ahead and weed your vinyl. Okay. Now, if you've ever worked with our vinyl, you know that that is really so sweet. I love that it's so easy to remove. Okay, so let's look. How did it do? Okay, so it says, this is such a teeny tiny lettering for vinyl. I can't believe it's so small. Like, let's make more lettering like this. Beautiful. Perfect. I didn't even lose a letter. But this isn't abnormal. Let me show you again, and we'll finish one. I'm going to show you also, I have another one that I've done the same thing. I've already weeded out the little holes. Let's do the same thing. Let me show you how absolutely accurate. It's not just a one-time wonder. I've been doing this all day, playing with this font and playing with... Done. Let's turn it. Let's see if it passed. Once again, perfect. It's interesting to see exactly where it did the same thing. Like right here on the inside of the S is really, really tiny. It cleared it here, but it didn't here. It did here too, but not here. The inside of the bottom of the E's, in between the T and the I here, and just a couple little spots like that. But we didn't lose any letters. We didn't even lose the periods or the tops of the I's or the bottom of the exclamation marks. That's huge because on this font, it was really a roulette. If I would lose this dot on the Kimberly or this dot on the tip, and any of these letters shifted, nothing happened on these. Let's finish weeding them out. Let me get these out of the way so I don't... All right, let me clean up my work area. Again, always just clean them up. You don't want to oops later. Okay. Look at that. It's tiny. It is so tiny. I'm going to also put this next to it just to compare. And then here, I'll remove the little pieces on this one too. Oh, I'm at the bottom of the screen. Let me shift for you. All right, so you can admire that teeny tiny font. And then while I'm fixing this one for us. Careful with those little pieces. Look at that. They're just, they show up everywhere. But look at how tiny. I think of shirts you can make with something like this. Things like a shirt that says read in between the lines and then the line actually be a sentence. Or your website, or pressing your business card or logo or company information or brand on the inside of a garment, because the letterings can be this small that you can do something so accurate. again, clean up. Fast forward through this. I don't need to watch me clean, but it's a good habit. Okay, look at that. They are tiny. No problem. Back to back, 2 sentences, teeny tiny font. Now let's put this against the measuring stick to show you exactly how small it actually is. Check that out. Phenomenal. This is perfect. Guys, thank you so much for joining us on this tutorial on how to do some micro fonts. If you have any questions or would like to know any other information about working with our Triton vinyl or getting supplies like our weeding picks or even the cut and press system so that you can do vinyl and lettering and designs all yourself, give us a call at Coleman & Company or visit us online at COLMAN&company.com. All spelled out. Have a great day.